Perylene Red. Sup, Liron here. Thank you for joining me in another episode of The Paint Show. And as I said, today we'll be looking at Perylene Red by Daniel Smith. Now, I promise you, on the next episode, we will be looking at another brand. I've been really focused on Daniel Smith lately because I just have a lot of tubes I want to go through. But the next one is going to be with a different brand, and also we're gonna have a couple of upcoming videos showing completely new brands that I almost never tried before, so I'm really excited about that. So anyway, let's get into this episode. So I originally got this Perylene Red in the Daniel Smith primary set together with Hansa Yellow Medium and French Ultramarine. It's a set that I really like in terms of the price, but this combo didn't work for me. I didn't like it as much. I prefer the warmer yellows, and this was the Hansa Yellow Medium wasn't really working for me. I didn't like the color combinations it created, but nonetheless, I really enjoyed each paint individually. So we're gonna have a very information-packed episode because Perylene is a very interesting pigment, so you'll have to bear with me as I read through my cheat sheet. But basically, this one is PR178. Okay, the next one, by the way, is PR179, which is Perylene Maroon, which is also quite a popular paint. So anyway, Daniel Smith's strength, I think, is in their reds. There's a huge variety of reds, and I always say if you want to do florals, things like this, Daniel Smith is a really good choice. So Perylene, what is Perylene? That's the first thing I wanted to look up Google and just figure out. So basically, it's a polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbon. Doesn't say much to me. When it's in a solid state, and I saw this also on Wikipedia, it is a brown kind of powdery substance. Now, Wiki says that it's a very hazardous pollutant. Handprint and this Perylene and its derivatives. Handprint, on the other hand, and I will put links to the sources but down below. So handprint say that all of the Perylene pigments aren't toxic, so I think they're right in that. Now I want to talk a bit about the source of the name itself. So there's this thing called Rylene dye. Okay, so that's R-Y-L-E-N-E dye, and I want to read to you about that. So a Rylene dye is a dye based on the Rylene framework of naphthalene units linked in peripositions. In homologous, additional naphthalene units are added, forming compounds. Now, the reason I go through this explanation is just to show you the source of the name. So we have Rylene, and then when we add those additional naphthalene units, we create a Perylene. Okay, so that's just the PE joined in the beginning of the name. So I thought that's pretty cool. There's also terrylene and quarterrylene. So Perylene is just the two, I guess, naphthalene units. So let's read more about the Perylene dye itself. Okay, so this was the Rylene dye, now the Perylene dye, which is interesting because it seems to have so many uses. Perylene dyes are useful for their intense visible light absorption, high stability, electron accepting ability, and unity quantum yields. So due to these properties, they are actively researched in academia for optoelectronic and photovoltaic devices, thermographic processes, energy transfer cascades, light-emitting diodes, and near-infrared absorbing systems. So that's pretty cool. And I read in regards to the use of the dye as well, it's used also in the automotive market. So let's talk a bit about the implications of this for our specific uses for watercolor. So in watercolor, PR178 goes through a moderately high change or shift when it's drying. Okay, so it's going to lose like 20% of its saturation. It's going to become a little lighter. So these things are to be expected. In terms of behavior with water, it's very reactive to water. So when you use it wet and wet, it should create some. It should flow very readily. And also when you wet it, once it starts drying, it will blossom readily as well. So just a significant amount of blossoms. And all of these things I mentioned because I want to check those out and try those out and see if we can get the same result. So we get more and more specific to our use. So now I'm going to read about this particular paint, this tube of Daniel Smith. Okay, so this one, the one we're talking about. So Perylene Red is a medium staining and semi-transparent. It creates vivid dark washes with a clean, brilliant red-orange. This sedimentary pigment offers an additional health plus as it is made from metal-free red. Clean modern pigments such as this will put accidental mud making in the past. Okay, so basically there's the additional advantage of this being a metal-free pigment. So this one has excellent light fastness, it is semi-transparent, it has medium staining as we mentioned, it's non-granulating. And it's a series 3, so when I looked on Amazon it went for about $13, which I don't think is that expensive for a series 3, so I wonder if it's like a special price or maybe it went down in price, because I saw, for example, that the Quinacridone Burnt Orange and others were a bit more expensive, so it's interesting, I'm not sure about that. So now what I want to do is mainly two things. I want us to look at the paint, and I'm gonna make sure this time to zoom in a little more, because I want you to see more of the details of what it looks like, especially the shift when dried. So this is something that interests me a lot. Then what I want to do is compare this one, just to show you a side-by-side comparison of this with Quinacridone Rose and also Pyrrol Scarlet. So two reds that are on the different sides of the scale. One is more orange, another one is a cooler. And I want you to see where this one fits in between, because colors are relative. If I show you this one, it's hard to see it in an absolute manner. You'll have to see it next to other paints that you may know better, just to figure out what it looks like. And finally, we're going to try out some warm and cool mixes. So we're going to have warm and cool blues mixed with it, and then warm and cool yellows, and just see what the results are. You're going to see the mix of the Hansa yellow medium that came together with it in the set, and you'll see maybe why I prefer to use it less, but though I'm not sure, maybe the orange will be a nice one. Just with the French Ultramarine that came with it, I didn't like it as much. So in any case, let's get started, change the angle, and take a look at what this paint looks like. So the first thing I want to do is squeeze some of the paint here onto my palette, to my empty mixing space. And the first thing you'll notice, some paints you open it up, the cap, and they just spill out. This one is relatively hard inside the tube, which I like. I don't like when I open them and they gush out. It's just my personal preference. It actually means, I guess, that the tube is really packed, and also it also means something about the pigment itself. So it's not necessarily bad, but I just prefer it. It's more comfortable. So anyway, I'm gonna just put out a little bit of the paint here. Okay. And what we're gonna do is, I want to show you what it looks like when I add some water, and then also on paper, of course. But first, I want to show you what it looks like on the palette. So let's just wet some of this paint. And you can see here's some separation, I guess, with the binder or the pigment, but it's not that significant. And I haven't used this tube for a while, so this could happen. So in any case, this is what it looks like on the palette. I'm going to hold it up a little closer to the camera. And I think you get a good look. So what we're going to do now is test it out on the paper. So I've got here a new sketchbook I got, and I hope to review it soon. I just want to become a little more familiar with it, but so far I really liked it. And so I'm really excited to share this one actually with you. It's really price efficient, and I used it. It's like as good as Moleskine, but probably better even. So in any case, this is what you get by using this paint, and I'm gonna zoom in a few moments and show you what it looks like up close. But let's grab some more pure pigment here, and you can really see the vibrancy. Now remember, some of this is probably we're gonna lose to the drying process, okay? So what I wanna do now is zoom in a little more, show you some more of this. So I'm gonna use some strong, pure pigment now. And you can see, I think this is a beautiful one. It is quite dark, and it appears to be much lighter, I guess, on the palette, if you look at it that way. But it does turn out pretty dark on the paper. It's also maybe just a little bit muted. What I want to try out is actually some wet in wet, because as they said, it should react really interestingly to water. So first off, let's try and actually add some water to this wash that we put here and check it out and see what happens. So they say it blossoms very easily, so I just want to check it out. I guess when you add water, there's a strong movement there. And maybe if I try softening maybe some of the edges. So that's interesting. Now remember, some of the results will depend on the paper, and this one I'm not using like a paper, I'm using a sketchbook, and those are almost always inferior. But anyway, very interesting result. So I'm going to try out just wet and wet. I'm going to just wet this area here. And we're just going to spill that paint onto that wet area and see how it reacts. So I can't really tell if this is more movement than usual, because a lot of paints just spread out freely when you put them wet and wet. But it could be, it definitely could be. Let's try it out some more, this time with darker pigment, more increasing the color, the paint ratio. And basically this is what you get. Now I left some spaces here for comparison, so we're going to put a swatch of Pyrrol Scarlet and Quinacridone Rose here next to this one, just to show you what they look like together. But before we get to that, I think we can try out some mixes here. So I left this space, and we're going to use this one maybe for blues. So what I'm going to do is, let me show you the palette. I just grabbed some red here, and I'm going to clean the brush, and I just want to add some, let's start maybe with French Ultramarine. Okay, I'm just gonna make sure to clean the well, because as you know, I don't really, I really dig into the wells. I don't clean the brush too much in between. I don't really care about that as much. So anyway, let's mix it up and see what we get. Very nice. So this one is with the French Ultramarine. It kind of reminds me of the mix with Pyrrol Scarlet, though they are a little different. I'm going to add a bit more blue to the mixture here. And then I'm going to revert it back to some red. So let's see what this looks like. Maybe let them mix a bit on paper. And finally, what I want to do is maybe try getting it to be really dark. So I'm gonna mix, if you're gonna make this mixture, by the way, just a side tip, if you wanna make it darker, it's a lot of work. It's just better to grab some pure paint, put it in another area of the palette. You don't really have to work super hard to, to add more and more pigment to this already very wet area. So I'm just gonna add some almost color only, paint only, and then I'm gonna grab some of that pure red, add it to the mixture, and then we're just gonna see what we get. So this one's very dominated by the red. I'm gonna add a bit blue to it. Don't even touch the palette, I just grab it from the well. So you see this one can get quite dark, which is good. I like to have a strong variety of values. So next up I want to try this out with phthalo blue. Now my intuition tells me that this is going to get really dark. So let's start just with the clean phthalo blue here. And usually when you mix this cool blue with cool reds, you get a really dark results from my experience. So anyway, I'm going to clean the brush, grab some red, let it maybe mix on paper. These should really neutralize each other much more than this one. This one you get a kind of a dark purple or violet. With these ones, they should really neutralize each other. So let's try it out. I'm gonna put some of the blue here. I'm gonna grab some of the red and add it to the mixture and just see what we get out of this. So you also, it's not completely neutral, but it is, I think, a little more gray than that. Let's try out darkening this even more, just adding more of everything. Maybe zoom out a bit. So anyway, grabbing some of the red here, mixing it up with the blue. And this one also turns dark, and you know what? They don't really neutralize each other as much as I thought, at least. Maybe just a bit. But they do turn a little darker than the previous mixture. This is a very nice play. I like to do like when in the shadows, and I'm gonna talk about it in an upcoming video. I really like to use strong warms and cools here when doing the super dark and rich shadows, and this can be a good pair of doing that. So next up I want us to try out mixing the yellows with the red. And just before that, I want to direct your attention to this area here. You can see how the blue really blossomed into the red. So it does react when it's wet. It's even if you look at the previous ones we did here, there's a lot of reaction. Okay, hopefully you can see this well. I'm gonna show you everything when we're done, like the final result. But anyway, let's try out the yellows now. So first off, we're gonna try it with the Hansa Yellow Medium that came originally in this set. I'm gonna make sure I clean up the well thoroughly so you can get a clear picture of what this looks like. Okay, I really don't care about just a little contamination, but I will make this effort because I want to show the paint in a clearer manner. So here we have the Hansa Yellow Medium. Gonna look like this, very lemony yellow. Now if I'm adding some red to it, this is what we get. So this is a nice orange. I prefer the orange created by warmer mix, but this is definitely a nice one. And if I push it more towards the red, this is what I'm gonna get. So I'm gonna add gradually more and more red. It's not gonna get really dark because the yellow is pathetic in terms of the value, really, which is okay. It fills its purpose, so that's fine. But anyway, if I want to try and push it darker, we actually get this beautiful gold here. So this is more towards the yellow, and if we get it towards the red, it gets to an orange. I actually like this one over that one. So now we can try it out maybe with a warmer yellow like the New Gamboge or Indian yellow. They all will work. So I'm just gonna grab a bit of the yellow here. Clean it up a bit. It is highly contaminated. So here we have a clean New Gamboge, okay? I'm gonna add just a bit of red to that. I'm gonna make sure I clean my brush. Okay, so this is what they look like together. Let's actually try and mix them up on the palette just a bit. So this is kind of the orange you will get by using these two. It's very interesting because the red here, you know what, I'm not even sure. The New Gamboge is warm, and this red is kind of in the middle. It's a very neutral one. I think this is why I like it too, the Perylene. I always liked the Perylene pigments, even the Perylene, let's just add a bit of pure orange here. So this is what you get. Even the Perylene green, I just like the Perylene based pigments for some odd reason. So what I want us to do now is go back to that original swatch, add Quinacridone Rose and Pyrrol Scarlet, and that way you can see and compare the results of the two. So I'm gonna zoom in just a bit. Okay, so now I'm gonna grab some Pyrrol Scarlet here. I always need to make sure that I clean up the palette. So here on the left I'm gonna put some Pyrrol Scarlet, which is one of my favorite reds still. And it's much warmer in comparison, you can see. It's just more red, I guess. Even makes this one look a little more neutral, though this one moves towards the orange, so it's actually probably this one that's a little more neutral. So on the other side of that, I want to show you what this looks like compared to the Quinacridone Rose, which is another color that I really like. And it actually makes the Quinacridone Rose look pink. So that's where the Perylene Red stands when compared to the other ones, okay? Here you can also see what it looks like. I hope this gives you a clearer view of what it looks like. So what I'm gonna do now is zoom in and show you everything. So here's everything we did so far. Here we have the comparison. We have some of the reactions, how it reacts to water, some mixes. I really like this paint. I don't know exactly how it's going to play out if I use it as a part of a primary trio, but I will probably have an answer for that because I'm going to do that. I just need to figure out what I'm going to use with it. So probably a warm yellow and I'm not sure yet, I think a warm blue as well. Could be interesting to try it out. I do think it reacts strongly with water, as they mention. Also, you can see this here. Let me show you a little more up close. You can see this here. You can see the reactions, the blossoms. You can see this here. So a very interesting color. The only issue that I can think of could be maybe its darkness. Though again, I'm not sure. I'll have to test it out really as a part of a primary set to figure out if this is an issue, a serious one, or just, you know, something that works out or tend to work out. So anyway, this is it for this review. I really hope you enjoyed it. Let's change the angle and wrap up this episode. So this is it. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I enjoyed making it and I enjoyed learning more about Perylene Red because I do want to use it as part of a primary trio maybe, and it helped me to better learn how I may use it and in what combinations. So anyway, this is it. I will put links in the description box if you want to get this tube. I'll probably put a link to the tube and the primary set itself. As I mentioned, I didn't like the way these three work together. So if you want to get it as a primary set, I would reconsider maybe just get the tube, or if you just need these three paints, feel free to do so. In the next episode, we will finally look at another brand, as I mentioned, so look forward to it. I will keep you updated. Also, if you want to get more updates and sneak peeks into videos, be sure to check out my Patreon page. I post there, for example, today I'm going to post a preview probably for Thursday's video or maybe Tuesday's video, so be sure to check it out. Everything is going to be in the description box. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for the support, and I will see you again in another vid real soon.